at that election results centre. Vanessa, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Sakina.
So Vanessa, if you could just give us a sense of what's happening at that centre. I just asked Mr. Simon Mabola, of course, about some of the complaints that came through about ballots not being sufficient in Cape Town, for example. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yes, Sakina, and that of course is one of the issues that I will be asking the provincial electoral officer here in the Western Cape, Courtney Sampson, about in a short while. You've spoken about the issues in the metro, for example, where at some voting districts there were insufficient ballot papers, and of course this attributed to the fact that quite a large number of voters would have gone and cast their ballots at voting districts where they were not necessarily registered. And of course one of the other issues that came up yesterday, which the ISC has responded to, was the issue, of course, in Wellington, a matter of separate queues at a voting station. Let me speak to Courtney Sampson now for just a clearer picture on that. And of course, before I do, I just want to say that in the province here, we all know that about 35% of voting districts have now been completed. That's just over 560 or so of the over 1,500 voting stations in the Western Cape. Let me turn to you now. Courtney, good morning to you. Let's tackle the issues that were brought to the fore yesterday. The issue of insufficient ballot papers, the issue, the Wellington issue. Let's deal with that. What has the response been to ballot papers, and why, and how? What have you learnt from this going forward?
Look, I think, thank you, Vanessa, and good morning. The question of the ballot papers was a simple problem that occurred because we have 100% ballot paper allocation plus 25% surplus. It is in areas where the turnout at the voting station went above that. Now, I think that if you plan for 25% surplus, you probably can be said to have a contingency plan in place. It's not that we haven't considered it, we didn't think it wasn't going to happen. We did that. And I think that the rights of South African citizens to be able to vote in a voting station other than the one where they are registered is something that is scripted in the law, and the people have the right to do that. So I think that is what has played itself out yesterday in many areas. We do, for instance, know that in the civic center, there was more than 4,500 extra people came to cast their vote. We also know that in many of our township areas, people were impacted on by the rain. And the people felt that I'm not going to go to that voting station. I'm going to go I'm going to the one closest to us. But I think that the important thing is that we were able to address the problem. And I think the staff did magnificently well. We wish that we could have moved those ballot papers a little quicker. But we also don't want to take the chance of just putting ballot papers in booths and saying to the people, take it over there or take it over there. We had an agreement that ballot papers will only be moved if they are escorted by SABC. So I think it was a matter of making sure that the security of those ballot papers was beyond reproach in terms of getting them to the voting stations. But the net effect of it all was that it did cause frustration in some communities. And I think that the other thing is also that it happened only in identifiable voting stations. It wasn't a kind of general thing that happened all over the place. The majority of South Africans in the Western Cape were able to vote without any issues. But it is unfortunate the way in which we operate as people, that we are going to focus on the things that have been problematic. And I'm glad that we were able to be given an opportunity to say that this is how we dealt with it. I think here in the early afternoon, those issues were resolved.
Okay, Courtney, thank you very much. Let us just talk about the status in the Western Cape at the moment. 35% of voting districts completed at this point. You mentioned that the rain could have had an impact on turnout, currently standing at about 64%. But of course, elections are all about it's a numbers game, and of course, as the day progresses, we'll get a clearer indication as to the impact on voter turnout in the province.
Yeah, it's early days yet, and I think my prediction is that the voter turnout will be lower than what we've seen previously. There is no way that you can have the kind of weather that we had yesterday on an election day and to expect it not to have had an impact on voter turnout. Voter turnout is never determined by only one factor, so the weather would have played a role, but there may be a lot of other factors as well that researchers will be able to point us to in the future as they begin to look at all these kinds of things and interview people as to why they did not vote. But I think we're keeping an eye on it. We're getting closer to the finalization of this process, and you can see that we're doing quite well in terms of getting that information in. Our staff have been at it the whole night, just making sure that we're getting those result slips back. And so I think that's where we are.
Thank you very much, Courtney Sampson, of course, the Provincial Electoral Officer here in the Western Cape. And that's it for us now from Cape Town.